Welcome to the FFL Solidity team call. Today is August 4th. We're going into week 2 of August already. So you guys know I'm crazy about the weeks because we have to be crazy about our goals. With that being said, again, we're going into week 2 of 4 of August. So the month does end on August 24th. So we all want to be aware that our business wants to be issued, paid out in terms of goals by August 24th. And again, we're entering week 2 as of today. So without further ado, we do have a very special guest on today. He's been crazy good at telesales. I got to see him in person training and really just resonated with him. I think he has a lot to offer. I think he's going to crush this call, so I'm really excited for it. With that being said, Marcus, how's your day going so far?
It's going pretty well. I would say I'm fairly productive today. I'm in a good headspace, so that's all I can ask for.
Absolutely. Well, that's always a good place to be in this industry. But before we jump into anything, Marcus, if you don't mind, just a little bit of your background, who you are, what you were doing before insurance, and kind of what brought you to Family First Life.
Yeah, most definitely. And just thank you for having me on the call as well. It's a pleasure being here. But Marcus Mccall, I've been with FFL for just a little over a year, probably about 14, 15 months. I started in May of 2021, so whatever that is. And before this, I was actually trimming trees. So I was an arborist before this for about 4.5 years. Really physical job, kind of just got out of it because, you know, the delegation and everything. I didn't do really well. You know, I consider myself a coachable person, but, you know, being able to run my own schedule was huge for me. And that's what attracted me most. Being able to dictate my income and my schedule was huge for me. But, you know, really physical job. It was dangerous. And I just felt like I was ready for a career path. And then I got introduced to Family First Life and I came in, I was super coachable and, you know, I was a student and I came in willing to learn and put in a ton of hours because I knew there was a learning curve that I had to get past, and I knew I had to put in a ton of activity if I wanted to, you know, make this thing work for me. And that's exactly what I did. And, you know, I really haven't looked back. So.
Awesome. I love that. And it really just goes to show, like, people come from so many different backgrounds and then come into this industry. And Marcus, if you don't mind me asking, how did you get introduced to the industry itself?
So it was actually one of my friends, Joshua Battles. He was actually studying for his test before me. And then I just so happened to, like, I quit my job, like, without even having a license. Like, that's how, like, involved that I was. I was just obsessing over all of the YouTube trainings, like pretty much every training. Like, I put in just probably hundreds of hours of just countless, you know, YouTube videos. And at one point I didn't even put my 2 weeks in or anything. I just said, I'm done. And then I started studying for my test. I studied for about 15 days. And then, you know, I went in, passed my test first try, and, you know, and I'm dedicated. So.
Love it. Awesome. So you came in through a friend who was in pre-licensing and you heard about it, quit your job, burned the ships, got into pre-licensing and passed the exam and never looked back.
Exactly. You know,
I love it. And, you know, the thing is too, it's like, you know, Marcus, I don't know who, you know, it is that was studying with you, but regardless, they introduced you to an incredible opportunity, whether they're here or not. Right. So what a blessing. So I love that story and just kind of to hear a little bit about you. So I know you've been killing it at telesales. When I had the chance to be in California, I had the chance to meet you, and also hear you train. And you really just resonated with me in the essence of you're not scared to be coachable and you're not scared of hard work. And to me, those are the only true prerequisites you have to do well here, right? And you definitely have those. So without further ado, just kind of jumping into the telesales side of things. Like, if you don't mind, Marcus, tell us a little bit about, like, what does your schedule look like? Do you run the same schedule every week? Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, it definitely gives me flexibility. Now, I will say that I was in home for about 7 months before I jumped into telesales, and not to say that, you know, you need to have in-home experience before you jump into telesales, because I know people brand new coming in crushing it with telesales. So But that's just kind of where I came from. I was ripping around LA County, you know, because I'm here in California, San Bernardino County, Ventura County, Riverside, like everywhere. And you know, that's you know, when I was you know, listening to a lot of training as well, is like the my windshield time in the car, just obsessing over that stuff. And you know, that's how I developed all the word tracks and stuff. But as far as schedule goes, I'm pretty much like a Monday through Saturday person. And I wake up and I do utilize, like, I am you know, licensed in multiple states, like 20 plus states, and I do utilize the time zone. So I'll get up, typically I'm up 5:30, no later than 6 o'clock. And then I'll dial Central and Eastern time. And then if I'm really feeling it, like, there have been days that I would dial Hawaii and I'd be up until 10 p.m. because it's only 7, you know, it's only 7 p.m. there. So I really like, you know, like I said, it's flexibility. You know, I kind of dictate, you know, it's different every week, but I will say my activity, I do spend about 9, 10 hours a day, like sitting, you know, at a desk, dialing the phones, you know, helping out agents, and, you know, sprinkling in like some, you know, video content, and, you know, trying to recruit as well, because I'm trying to work that muscle as well. You know, it's the combination of both of them is pretty tough to produce at a high level, and um, you know, be able to, you know, recruit and whatnot. But it typically is Monday through Saturday. I'll, you know, take like a half day on Saturday. And then Sunday, I pretty much kind of leave, you know, leave it open. If I have an appointment, I'll run it. But it really does give you the flexibility, because you can close people anywhere. Like, I'm at home right now. I do have an office out, you know, in Apple Valley with Paul, and you know, I like to go there, you know, Fridays and Saturdays. Thursdays are nice too, but you know, it just gives you the flexibility. So whatever works for you, but that's typically how I run my schedule, Monday through Saturday, and then kind of Sunday just chill. So
I love that. And I love how you pointed out, you said, you know, like regardless of what day it is or what's going on, you know, I'm usually sitting somewhere for 9 to 10 hours doing money making activities, right? And that's the bottom line, is like, you know, you're talking about waking up at 5 in the morning, not even necessarily that, you know, just to start your day, but to start on Eastern time and then going all the way to Pacific, and then taking it a step further on some days, dialing in Hawaii or Alaska or whatever that might look like, which is the amazing part, and the flexibility piece that you're also talking about with telesales, which I think is awesome, right? And for you, the biggest thing that you said felt like you were lacking was that flexibility. So it works out beautifully for you. Another thing you brought up, Marcus, is you brought up, you know, in-home. And I do think it's important just to kind of like hit on this a little bit. Like you said, Marcus, you know, there's agents who come in, they just start strictly on telesales and they do well, and that's awesome. But if you can get that in-home exposure, like Marcus said, you know, 7 months in the field, now he's crushing it, helping over, you know, 30, 40 families a month. You know, if you can get that in-home exposure and then bring it to the telesale, if you will, that's powerful. So thanks for hitting on that too, Marcus.
no
And then in
problem.
terms of you know, your lead flow, let's say, you know, like what does that look like for you? It might vary a little bit, or does it? What does it look like on a weekly basis?
It does vary a little bit, but typically I'm doing all outbound internet leads. I do a lot of the CRM leads. I do a lot of Nectar leads. Nectar, I would say majority of my sales come from. And the resource Ringy has been helping me out a ton, because you can fully exhaust your leads with these text campaigns that they have, and then the organization that they have in the back office. Like, you know, you can organize leads that haven't been called, leads that are, you know, you need to follow up with, leads that you've sold, you know, leads that are interested, leads that you've quoted. You can really organize yourself well with Ringy, and it does give you the ability to recycle old leads. I've had like 20,000, like, I'm not even exaggerating, it's probably, you know, 15, 20,000 leads in my CRM, and, you know, within, you know, FFL. And, you know, I was just buying leads every single week. And, you know, I was horrible in the beginning. And I recycled my leads, because I can honestly say, and I always tell people this, like, there's, you know, I'll make a sale and I'll be like, there's no way I would have made that sale like 6 months ago, because my objection handling skills have gotten way better. So, And then I will sprinkle in like live transfers. I'll do all web leads, and EverQuote leads, but that's like, you know, when my lead flow is like down and I'm like, oh, I'll just turn them on and I'm feeling, some type of way like I needed to turn them on. I don't know.
Right, right.
But
I need more leads. I need more, right. So,
yeah, and then
though
I will
that's
say that the 1, 2, and 3 month final expense mailers and the mortgage mailers, the 1, 2, and 3 months are really good as well. Like there's no way that you can lose with those if you buy them in bulk. Um, I bought, this is a few weeks ago, I bought like 12 of them in Hawaii, and I closed 3 of them. And I'm like, that like never happens. And I got hooked on those, but I would say that those are a really good lead source. I filled them out by hand, like it's high intent, like can't go wrong with them.
absolutely. So really what I hear you saying is like you have a little bit of everything. Kind of you dabbled here, you dabbled there, but you make sure that you have leads across the board, CRM, whatever that may be. You make sure that you're not going into a day like, what am I going to do today? Right? Because when we start the day like that, we usually end the day like that too, right? Like, what are we going to do today? It's like, well, we got nothing done, right? What I should have done yesterday, right? So you're walking in and you're like, wherever you're walking to, whether it's your kitchen table or to the office, you're walking in, you're unpacking your stuff, and you're getting to it, right? So I love that. And then in terms of like your opening, right? I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, but only because I know because I heard you do it, right? So like you're opening, like you're calling a lead, like what does that sound like and why does it sound that way? Because you just pointed out a great point, Marcus. You said, a particular person I closed, a couple of weeks back, I may not have been able to help that family if it were 6 months ago, just because my word tracks are different, my skill set is different, right? You've evolved a lot in a short span of time because that's just how this industry is if you're working it correctly, which you are. But with that all being said, kind of talk to me a little bit about like what does that opening sound like and why does it sound that way?
Okay, yeah, 100%. So I will say that depending on the lead, my opening probably might change. So and that's what I forgot to mention too about Ringy. So when I'm having fresh nectar leads come in, you can actually integrate with Ringy where it sends out a text immediately as they submit the form. And so I'm already hitting them with one point of contact right there. So they pretty much kind of like already know who I am when I call almost, because and then they'll actually book it. There's a self book link on your calendar that it's like integrated with your Google Calendar, and that's how I organize myself as well. But if it's a fresh lead that just fill out the form, hey John, this is Marcus McCall. I'm the state field underwriter and benefit coordinator assigned to get you the information that you requested on the burial and final expense programs. How you doing today? And
Doing
they'll
good.
tell me, yeah, that's pretty much how it is every time. And then I'll let them know, hey, I'm gonna verify your information real quick, but John, I always ask everyone what's pretty much got you looking into to these programs. You just trying to cover a funeral? You trying to leave someone some money? What exactly what were you looking to do? And then I have them convey to me why they need it, and I don't become a salesperson at that point.
I like that. So right from the jump, you're like basically, hey, this is Marcus, how you doing today? And then you're like, so why, like, what was your concern when you filled this out? You're extracting the why, so they don't really have a whole lot of time to think about why they don't need it. They're like, oh, I'm on the phone with Marcus, and I just told him, for 10 seconds why I needed life insurance, right?
Yeah.
And that's all we're looking for, right? Like we're not necessarily looking to make the client cry. We're looking for them to tell us why they need it so we can understand how we're going to help them, right?
Mhm.
So I love that. And then what are some things that maybe you feel like, okay, if I'm a brand new agent and I'm doing telesales, starting today, that I might bump into that you feel like you kind of learned how to overcome while doing telesales. Does that make sense?
Yeah, most definitely. And again, I'll go back to it depends on what lead that you're running. So, a new agent coming in, like I'm telling them, hey, the 1, 2, and 3 month um, mailers, whether they're final expense or mortgage, they're great leads, and you're gonna deal with one major objection. I've already got this taken care of, right? So perfect. That's actually the purpose of my call. I'm actually the state field underwriter and benefit coordinator. And we're just doing policy reviews to just make sure that you're receiving all your benefits and you're not getting overcharged for insurance and you're receiving the best rates. Verify their information, then go back into your script. But for a new agent, just work on those objection handling skills because you're going to get
I
crushed
love
if you
that.
don't.
And I want to pause you there, Marcus, because how you just said that, it's like it goes back to it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? And your voice is so like, you're not like, okay, John. So I get like, it's like you're like meeting John where John's at, right? You're like, it's no big deal. You already got it taken care of. That's exactly why I'm calling. You know, my job is just to do a quick review of your policy, make sure you're in the best situation. Like, verse if you're like, well, and I guess, or like death pausing, like they're gonna be like, bye, right? So, like you're saying here, the most important thing you can do as a new agent is get punched in the face on the phone because you're gonna learn how to stand back up, or you're not. If you're not going to be coachable and you're not going to plug in, right? It's going to go one way, or it's going to go the other. Like, you know, it's this or it's that. Like, it's not going to be in the middle. And if it is in the middle, it's going to hurt so bad for so long because, Marcus, we only got a couple objections on the phone, right? Like, they're not over there like planning what they're going to say when we call. However, we're able to plan, hey, these are the main three we get, right? These are what we're going to say when they say that. And this is how we're not going to act. We're not going to go into panic mode. We're not going to go into pause mode. We're going to go into, okay, no big deal mode, right? No big deal. That's why I was calling. I know, right? So I love that. And I kind of cut you off a little bit there, but we were on kind of some stuff you've bumped into and some hurdles you've had kind of going through the telesales process.
Yeah, and another huge objection with the telesales is going to be, you know, when you're asking for their banking information or their social. And really, you just have to, you know, level with the client. Hey, yeah, you know, I understand where you're coming from. Have you applied for these programs before? Okay, so this is pretty standard as far as applying for life insurance. So, you know, the reason why they need your social because they need to identify you, right? And then we need an active form of payment on file. So your financial institution, because they want to make sure that you're the name on the account and nobody's trying to take insurance out in your name. It's pretty standard, right?
Love it.
Yep.
Amen. And that's how you probably got in that though. And are there times you overcome it? Yeah, probably a lot more than you did your first day. But are there times that you don't still?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
like there's times
Run
in
the
home that we
numbers.
don't. Yeah, it's all numbers, right? You got to just keep it rolling. And like I know for me, there's been times I've been like, oh wow, this is like a lay down slam dunk, and then I'm in the home and it's like it's not. They're weary, they're being weird, whatever. And it's like we got to just know it's a numbers game. So if you feel like that's happening to you, it's a numbers game, but it's also a level of how Marcus just handled it. Marcus, you're handling it differently today, like you said, than you probably would have 6 months ago. And I love that you're bringing up that like is a learning curve, right? So you mentioned the bank, and that makes sense how you just explained it. I love it. Very simple to the point. And how about social?
Social, so my close has actually changed. So once I, you know, gather their medical information, hey, I got a good idea who you qualify for. Let me throw everything in the system here and then just double check and make sure. And then I'll come back, I'll give them numbers. And then once they, you know, once they pick one, okay, perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fill out what's called a request for coverage. And, you know, that's just code for application. You know, that's just Transamerica's application. And they are going to need, you know, 3 pieces of sensitive information. They're going to need your driver's license, if not a state ID, because they're going to have to verify who you are. They're going to need your social security number because we're going to do that medical background check, that MIB check I was talking about. And then we're going to need an active form of payment on file. So your financial institution, so an account and routing number. And Marisa, you know, we're not taking anything today, unfortunately. You know, they're just validating that, you know, you are who you say you are. And, you know, Joe Schmo isn't trying to get a insurance policy in your name, right? Do you have all 3 of those?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, perfect. So, and then I'll go into the application. That's kind of like, you know, my close. That's how I do that. And I
All right,
stole
love
that,
it.
right? And I stole that from Brandon Kitchens. Like everybody, you know, that's a good thing about this business. You know, everybody takes something from everybody.
Exactly. It is. It's the great part. It's like, my in-home is a mixture of, like 20 different people plus within Family First Life, right? Just like our phone scripts, whatever it might be, everything's always a combination of what we're plugging into. So with that being said, Marcus, you mentioned in the beginning, you're like, I'm coachable, I'm a student of the business. What does that mean to you? Because I think that that's really important, because a lot of people like miss that, Marcus. You ever have like an agent and they're frustrated with their results, but they're not willing to learn, but they're not willing to watch the TNL. They're not willing to, but they're willing to call you and complain. And it's like, well, Marcus was just on the TNL and crushed it about telesales and answered all the things you're complaining about. Like, where were you at? So I guess with that being said, kind of like, what does that look like for you being a true student of the business and being coachable?
So I'm a big believer in duplication. Like, you can duplicate something, but if you don't do what the other people are doing, then you'll never duplicate. And duplication does come in with countless hours of YouTube and hopping on the trainings. And if you're not willing to be a student and be coachable, then you're never going to get past that learning curve. And how you're going to do that is a ton of activity, like putting in a ton of activity. If you're not willing to put the hours and the work in, you're not going to get the skill that you need and the experience that you need in order to protect these families. So it's all about, do they want it bad enough? Like, you'll be able to, identify that pretty easily, if the agent wants it or not. Like, I mean, but the biggest thing is just meet them where they're at, try and assist them the way you can. But if they conveyed to you and they told you this is where they want to be, this is what it's going to take to get there. If you can't duplicate this, then that's not where you want to be. Maybe we should, reorganize, your goals, or, maybe, but I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure.
No, it does, because you got to meet people where they're at for sure, and everyone's goals are a little bit different for sure. And sometimes it's like we want to shoot for the moon. We're like, I'm going to help 100 families this month, which I love the enthusiasm. And by the way, everybody on here, we could all do it if that's what we wanted to do. But it's just like what you said, Marcus. It's about, what do you actually want to do? Because it's like, I can say I want to help 100 families, but do I want to put the work in? Right? Like, that's what it's going to come back to. Do I want to work hard enough to do that? There's a conversion that's Josh Chris, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He went over this. He said $1,000, 1,000 dials. His point is to make $1,000 on telesales, you're probably going to have to make about 1,000 dials. He's setting that bar quite a bit higher, which to me is accordingly. Like, I'd rather, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, right? So kind of like, with that being said, you talked about the hours, right? You talked about like you're working 9-10 hours a day, Monday to Friday, and you're taking like a half first day or so Saturday, depending, right? So obviously there's a lot of activity in there, or there's going to be something else. There's going to be a lot of idle time, which with the numbers you're producing, I highly doubt it's idle time. But with that being said, what does like your dial count look like? So I feel like these are numbers that it's like we can weigh them, like you just said. If it's duplicatable, why aren't we going to duplicate exactly what someone else is doing and someone else is doing? Because Marcus, I know that when I'm in home, if I make 500 dials and I'm going to probably book my schedule, typically, not every time. But if I'm doing telesales, I know that 500 dials for the next 3 days probably is not going to cut it. So what does that look like, like on your end?
Now, I will say I am not a big numbers guy. I'm more of an activity-based person, but I know what my activity looks like if I'm going to produce between 30 and 40. Like, I know what that looks like. And if I don't, and I can always go back and reflect on my activity and be like, well, that's why you didn't really submit that many applications this week. You didn't do anything. Like, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. But I'm not typically a big numbers guy. Now, I will say Ringy does track, and I do track my dials with Ringy, but I'm also doing outbound calls from my phone, just without the dial software. And I guess typically about 5 hours, maybe I'll dial like maybe like 300 something odd times, but not a huge numbers guy. I'm more so, hey, let's get it, let's grind.
Right.
I'm like, I'm not going to waste the time tracking the numbers when I could be actually dialing. But that's just me, though. Everybody's different, right? So
For sure.
it is good
But
to track numbers, because then you can actually see what you can do within a time span. You're like, if you grind for 5 hours and you track your dials, and then you go back the next day and then you time yourself with 5 hours, and then you see that you're not there, then it's an easy way to track your activity. But I'm more of a, hey, let's
let's
get it
go.
dial, really intentional.
Love it.
So
Okay, but for sure you're making more than, you're making more than 1,000 dials in 3 days. Is that fair?
yeah,
Yeah, you're like that. You're like, that's funny, right? Like, because you're making it happen. I think really where I'm going with this is exactly what you're saying is it's an activity-based system, right? Like this whole system is worked out of activity. If you're not going to work, guys, it's not going to work, right? Like, Marcus, have you ever had a month? Be honest, because I have. Have you ever had a month where you were like, I'm just having kind of like an off month, like it is what it is, like whatever, kind of like you're like going into you're like doing like half the work, you're just kind of like having it, but in your heart that you're not going to see the result. Have you ever been
yeah,
there?
yeah. I've definitely been there. And this goes back a while, but I believe it was like 7 or 8 months as I didn't issue pay less than 20, but I have been there. And it's, I don't know if it's, and this goes back to your why. Like, you have to have a big why, because if you don't have the right mindset, you can't put in, ample enough activity throughout the day if you're not, you know, really clear on why you're doing what you're doing. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've had, bad months, and I think it goes to complacency. Like, it's a lot easier, to slack off when you look at your bank account and you got 50,000 as opposed to, 5,000. You're going to look at, you're going to be like, oh, okay, so I have to get to work. Like, I have no choice. Like, I only have like a month, a couple months rent. Like, I have to
Right.
get to work. So, and I think that's where it goes. And I feel like everybody struggles with that. They'll like see really good results, start getting a bunch of deposits, and then they get complacent. Um, and I feel like everybody struggles with that. I'm trying to get past it and then look, because my goals are bigger than that.
Love it.
But it's tough. You have those off months, but that's something I don't want to dabble in, is inconsistency.
Amen to that, because that's really where I was going is it's when you're consistently doing something, even if you're consistently writing 10, you helping 10 families, you're consistently helping 15 families or 50, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're doing, your mindset's impacted by it, right? So it's like, like you're saying, Marcus, it's been a while for myself also that I can be like, oh, I really didn't work that month. Like, I don't know when that was, but it did happen, a lot, some time ago. But my point is, you're able to take a look at that and you're able to say, okay, like that's never going to happen again. Like, I'll never forget, I had a month where I helped like 13 families, and it wasn't even that I was financially hurting. It was that my why was hurting. Exactly what you just said. It was because, okay, why are you doing this? Like, are you doing this so that you can help 13 families in a month and slack off and act like, go play, business owner? Or are you doing this because for a bigger reason and a bigger purpose and for other people outside of yourself? Right. So it's like that moment of self-reflection can be a big deal. For some people, kind of just being like what you're saying, Marcus, you're like, I don't know because I haven't been there, because I'm consistent, right? But if inconsistency is an issue, which we both know, like that does happen a lot in this business, complacency, inconsistency. And then we start blaming other factors, right, Marcus? It's like, it's the leads. Marcus, it's your fault. Like, it's because you didn't help me on Sunday night at 9:30 at night, like, when I texted you. It's somebody else's fault. And we start pointing to outside factors that really aren't what's happening. It's what's happening is you didn't work the past 30 days or X amount of weeks, and it's compounding in a negative way against you. The only way to work that back is to compound, push it away by essentially just outworking it, right? Like, there's no reason to dwell there. You don't have to stay at your 13, families a month. Don't dwell there. Just move on and know that you helped 40, right? So I love that. And then in terms of just, telesales, just generally speaking, if you're talking to a brand new agent, they're like, oh, I'm going to be doing my telesales tomorrow. Like, what do you want to make sure that agent has on deck ready to go that some tools maybe that might help them out outside of like their leads?
Okay, live dials, and unmuting, because you can get live coaching. If you're brand new and you're not on live dials getting coaching, then you don't, like, you're just, hindering your learning curve. Like, it could be a lot quicker if I give you a word track, or even you can unmute and possibly help me with something. So not only you're hurting yourself, but you're hurting the people around you, because they can possibly take something from you that, so I always preach that, like, not only can we help you, but you can also help us, because that's an opportunity for me to coach, and that's an opportunity for you to get better. So live dials is number one. Like, you have to have live dials.
Love it. So live dials, you're basically like, I'm not working with you if you're not on live dials, like essentially, right? Is that
Yeah.
because that's how I am. It's like, if you're not on the dial team, but you're calling me for like I'm dialing on the dial team and you're calling my phone, like, it's confusing. I don't see you on there, right? Like, I'm just on mute, right? So I hear you on that. Live dials is huge because you get that true feedback. And even though it's like, you might be like, oh, well, I'm embarrassed. Like, Marcus, we all had a first day, right? We all had a first month in this business. Mine was really ugly, like mine, I was, like about to be out of here. I wasn't a family first life, but I was like, I don't know if I can do this, right? But eventually that changed, right? But at the same time, it changed because I was open to coaching, right? I know how to do it. I already did that. Like, it was, okay, no, I need help because clearly I'm not getting where I want to go, right? So I love that. And then any other little pieces of tips or things that you would say, hey, if you're going to be doing telesales, you definitely have to be doing this?
I would say, I really want to give you guys value. I don't want to just say something and not mean it, but just, you have to have fresh leads. Like, you have to continue to invest, if you can, in leads. Like, we can get leads pretty cheap, and you put in the activity and you're coming into telesales. You want to have that constant lead flow, because if your lead flow is inconsistent, your numbers are going to be inconsistent. So, and then when new agents are making sales, don't go out and, buy steak dinners for everybody. Don't go and, when you get those deposits, reinvest it back in leads, because this is still a business, and you still like, that's gonna, like, that is your fuel right there. So you definitely have to reinvest back in leads, and just don't go, blowing the money, and then you can't reinvest back in your business, and then you get a charge back. So that's my biggest thing. When you get deposits, save the money and reinvest back in leads.
I love that. And I think that's huge. And you added a ton of value today. I just want you to know that, Marcus, truly. And lead flow is huge. Lead flow is cash flow. Lead flow is your business. Without leads, you're out of business, right? Like, none of us want to be out of business. So always making sure that your first earned dollars are going into your next lead order. Always making sure you have money for your next lead order. There's been times for me, Marcus, and I'm not too proud to say it, that I didn't make my car payment. This is, years back, because I would let it be late because I needed to buy leads, because I knew leads were going to give me 10 times my car payment, and I'd be able to pay my car and whatever else I need to pay. But if not, I was going to be out of business, right? So love that. And actually, I'd love to just leave it there. Live dials, huge. Leads, both of those are freaking huge, because if you can do those two things, you're coachable and you're implementing and you're following a system. So like, if we can just keep it simple, like Marcus just said, the two biggest things, live dials and lead flow, right? So I love that. And then just to kind of wrap it up, Marcus, what are your goals to close out 2022, whether that be personal, business, anything?
Really, I want to just have continued growth, because we're constantly growing. I'm still very, very new. And it goes back to getting, being complacent. Like, I will always be a student, and I will always have that mindset that somebody else knows more than me, and just to have the continued growth in the business, because I am learning every single day. Like, I'm just starting to, get into the advanced market stuff, and I just want that continued growth. And then I also just want to put as many people, as possible in a good position so they can duplicate this and they can run their own schedule, and, they can dictate their income and they can take care of their family. That's a pretty vague goal, but that's kind of what I want. Necessarily not numbers, but
You know what? That's bigger than numbers though, right? Because that's in your heart. So that's huge. No doubt in my mind, you're going to continue to grow in terms of just self-development. I'm really thankful I had the chance and opportunity to meet you. I'm thankful that you were on this call with me today. And I know I took a lot from it too. I'm still learning each and every day. So definitely keep that mindset, Marcus. I know you're going to help a ton of people duplicate exactly what you're doing. I'm really proud of you. I appreciate you being on with us today, and I hope you have an amazing day.
thank you. I appreciate you.
All right, take care. Bye, Marcus.